That is different. Okay. Well, we're going to move forward. Again, this is week 6, and tonight's theme is bursting at the seams, and we're still in ignorance, the enemy of destiny. And as I was sitting down pondering some things earlier, Abba just kind of said to me, or he showed me an image of Jonah and this fish that was spitting Jonah out, vomiting Jonah out on the land. Of course, where he vomited him out at was actually this place that he sent him to Nineveh, right? And he wanted to go somewhere else. He wanted to go to Tarshish. He didn't want to go fool with the Ninevites at all. And I want y'all to keep that in mind. The Ninevites were enemies of the people of Yah. Okay, and we'll talk about enemies and adversaries, the difference, because a lot of times, because we don't understand the difference between enemies and adversaries, we're applying verses, biblical conversations that don't have anything to do with what the Father is saying, because in no way, shape, or form is he interested in his children being pummeled by darkness while we quote unquote blessed enemies. That's, that phrase, it doesn't it's so taken out of context, and it's been taken out of context for so long that now people are under an impression that has them under weights and in battles that they have no business being in. But we'll bring that up. I don't know if we're going to get that far tonight, but we'll bring that up. If not tonight, definitely next week, because we definitely want to get into some more of the weapons of your warfare, right? We do understand that there are weapons that are not carnal. The Bible talks about this. Our weapons are not carnal. They are mighty through God to the pulling down of strongholds, right? The weapons of our warfare are not carnal. We're dealing with spiritual wickedness in high places. However, there are persons in the earth that allow wickedness to be established in themselves because this is what they've chosen. And because that's what they've chosen, they then position themselves for destruction. So we'll get into that next week, because we definitely need to know the difference between an enemy and an adversary. And we need to know what the Bible says about these things, not just taking things out of their context, not reading them properly in the context that they were given and applying it to something and watching ourselves be destroyed. That was never the Father's desire, and it was never his plan. But as I was sitting there, he began to show me Jonah being spit out of this great fish's mouth that, by the way, the Father created from the beginning of the thing. The Father always deals with the end from the beginning. And so I love him for that. Elder Vicky, I used to quote that scripture all the time, that he's the God that knows the end from the beginning. So every time he's doing something at the inception of it, he understands what the end looks like. So that's why he's functioning from that place. Okay. And so this is a place that we really need to begin to identify with, because as we're moving forward in the things of Yah, as we're moving forward in kingdom advancement in this hour, in this age, in this season, we need to be aware of the end from the beginning of what we're doing. In other words, we need to have had conversations with the Father to know what it is we ought to do, to know how it is we ought to move. And if we don't have those conversations and know what it is we should be doing and how it is we should be moving, then we're going to get those outcomes that we're not, that we're not desiring. We're going to get the outcomes that we're not desirous of. But I love how strategic the Father is in everything that he does. And I believe that's one of the natures of the Father that he really wants us to identify with in this hour. We've been talking about this tap in or be exploited. That's so serious. If we don't tap into what he desires, if we don't tap in to the thing that he has established, then we're going to be exploited by darkness. And it's such a funny thing, because we are so close to things all the time, but yet so far away. I've got a video clip that I'm going to share with you tonight, and I'm going to do my best to bleep out the expletives. But I have told you guys before, I'm not really as pressed about that, because it's not like you don't hear these things, and it's not like you haven't heard these things. So we're not going to pretend like these are not things that are all around us all the time. The point of the clip is for you to identify with the fact that you are ever so close to the thing that you are looking for. You're ever so close to the answer, yet so far away. But the reason that you're far away from it, even though you're so close to it, is because of a mindset. It's because something has been told to you, something has been communicated, and based on that communication and your capacity, your lack of capacity, I should say, you've been made so small in your mind in a space. And so because of the smallness of the mind in that space, and we've all had these positions and we all still have to grow. The things that we don't know, when they're revealed to us, it takes growth. It takes maturity. It takes a willingness. And I've been talking about this for the last couple of days, that a body of work only needs the attention of the person. And once you get the attention of the person and they actually grasp that body of work, then when the test comes, they're able to ace the test, right? They're able to ace the test because they've given themselves to that body of work. So I've been saying this, that when you can have several people, and I used this example earlier, you can have 3 people in the same course. One of them might be left behind, might have to repeat a grade. The next one might go grade to grade, but the third one might be double promoted. You understand what I'm saying? But it's based on how they assimilate that work. It's based on how they assimilate the work that is before them. Okay. And it simply takes your decision to apply yourself to the thing that's before you. And I believe that's what the Father is after in this hour. He's after us applying ourselves to the work that is before us. What is the thing that the Father is saying in this moment? Not the busy work of people. We are good at busy work. People love to be busy just so they can avoid. Busy work is a drug, okay? Busy work is a sedative. Busy work is an alcohol. It's a spirit that is used to keep us distracted from the things that we ought to be doing. And this age that we live in, there's plenty of things to do. There's plenty of things that are often presenting themselves to us, right? Whether you are online and you're scrolling through TikTok or Facebook or whatever those things are, and maybe you say, oh, that's not me. I don't scroll through Facebook and TikTok. I'm just putting them all in one. I don't scroll through Facebook and TikTok. I'm not really an online person, but you're an offline person, and you're doing a lot of busy work that may not be the thing that the Father is actually calling you to. And so this thing is so important, because while we may be called to some things, there may be some other things that the Father wants to do, but because we haven't wrapped our minds around that, because we haven't given ourselves fully to the yes yet, we're comfortable in the one thing or the 2 things that we're doing that we believe that He's called us to do, but we're refusing the rest. And so that's what I mean by busy work. So we'll add more time to the things that we feel like, okay, I know that's one of the things, but He's saying, yeah, that's great, but I need you to diversify. That's a word for the night. Diversify. If we diversify and identify with the things that the Father is calling us to, then we won't be stuck in one place. It's almost like, as a farmer, putting all your eggs in one basket, right? Putting all your eggs in one basket. And what happens if you trip, right? If you trip with all those eggs in that one basket, all the eggs are done for. All of them are cracked. But if you put them in multiple baskets and you even allow someone else to assist you with the carry of those eggs, they will all probably make it back to the house safe, especially if you have a system, right? So I'm going to share this clip, and then I'm going to come back and talk about this for a minute, because as I'm stating to you, you're going to find that in this clip, it's so baffling that this person is so rigid in their thinking. They're so settled in a space that the thing that is so obvious to the people, to all of us that are watching, the thing that is so obvious to us is not obvious to them. And they even take a position to be very angry about the challenge that's being given to them in a moment. And you'll notice that even in that space, this is how it works. When we're being challenged to change, often we're getting very irritated. It's because we don't have the information that we need to make the change. But if we just identify, okay, a change needs to be made. Now I need to apply myself to identify what this change is. This is what Daniel did. Daniel took the time to say, okay, I need to identify. I need to understand. I have information. I see it. I hear it. but I need the understanding of this information. And he settled himself to go after that thing. He wanted to understand it. He was not going to rest until he understood it. He was not going to eat until he understood it. Why? Because he understood the value. If he didn't understand all of the thing that he was going after in that moment, what he did understand was the value of what was being presented to him. And so this is where we are. We've got to really identify with the value of the things that the Father is saying to us. In every season, we can no longer put things on the back burner. We can no longer see things as insignificant. Oh, well, it wasn't my thought. So because it wasn't my thought, then I don't think it is a thought. No, there's more than just the things that are running through our minds. The Father knows how to bring a thing to our attention. He knows how to get our attention and say something to us. But the question is, when he says it, will we receive it? When he speaks it, will we say yes to what he's spoken? The children of Israel said yes, but when he began to speak, they said, oh, no, 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 no. That's not, this is too much for us. Well, we don't believe that we have the capacity for this kind of relationship. We don't believe that we have the capacity. It's people that I love all around me every day that I've been telling things for a lot of years. And a lot of times people wait until those years pass and then something happens. And when that thing happens, now they're saying to me, I remember when you said this. Now I'm feeling the pull for this. Or now I'm feeling, and I'm not saying, understand there's a difference between a prophetic word and a word of wisdom and a word of knowledge. So often when I'm saying a thing that's for now, that is a word of wisdom that I am giving. That word of wisdom is going to push a person into the next space. Then the word of knowledge, okay, is going to give them all the information. You know, I'm going to say things that you didn't think I knew. I'm going to say things about you and say things concerning you that you might not have known that I was aware of. Some of my people understand this, and one of them that's online right now, Elder Vicky, she used to be in a space, and she would go into these spaces, and every time she would get into that space, this was in the beginning of her coming into ministry with me. Every time she would get into a space, seemed like I would call her and say, what's up? Where you at? You know, every time she would get in that space, she would get there and it would be me on the phone saying, hey, what's up? Where you at? You know what I'm saying? But that word of wisdom comes to position us. See, there's the prophetic word, there's the word of wisdom, there's the word of knowledge. I was sharing this earlier. But what we have to understand is that the prophetic word is for something that's coming. The prophetic word is a conversation about what is to come. But that word of wisdom and that word of knowledge positions us for the word that is to come. You understand what I'm saying? So if we omit or if we don't see significant the word of wisdom or the word of knowledge, then when the word actually takes shape, when the word actually is performed, when the word actually is manifested, we're not in position to even receive the word because we haven't walked through that process. Remember, we're talking about, you know, that body of work and how we're able, how we have the capacity or not the capacity to take on that word, to take on that body of work and be processed from one space to the next. It is absolutely imperative that we take very seriously the word of Yah in this season. There was a word that I used to give the people that were with me, and I would say, do you take him seriously? And of course, everybody would say, yes, absolutely, I take him seriously. But I beg to differ that we take him seriously because a lot of times he's saying things to us and we think that there is some kind of loophole. We think that there is some kind of option in what he's saying. Sure, you have the right to choose, but what I'm saying to you as in there being no option is that if you don't take his option, which is the option of life, then what do you have left? If you don't take the option, if you don't take the road that he's talking about, then what road do you have left? There are only two roads. There's the wide road, which many people are on, and then there's the narrow road, which few people find. He said, few people go there, be there. Okay, and few people find this road, but many go there on the large road, on the wide road. Everybody's on that road, but this narrow road, there are not many people there. So I'm gonna put up this clip, and I want to share this with you really quickly because I want you to see just how close you are to something, but yet so far, and it being simply just a matter of mentality. Let me put this on really quickly, and the reason I play this background music, there we go, just a little bit, is because we don't want any copyright issues, right? Okay, so I just gave some of y'all the sauce. Many people wouldn't do that, give you the sauce for why they're doing what they're doing. They wouldn't give you that. And okay, I do hear it now. I couldn't hear it before. Okay, let me put this video up.
F-A-T.
Spell her.
H-E-R.
Okay, what is it together?
I got to start it over. Okay.
Dad, spell fat.
F-A-T.
Spell her.
H-E-R.
Okay, what is it together?
Fat her. What?
Are you sure?
Yeah, fat her. What's so funny? I'm saying it right.
Okay, are you sure?
I don't get it.
Yes, fat her.
I get it.
Am you guys making fun of me? What?
And her.
Spell it.
F-A-T-H-E-R.
What does that spell?
Fat her.
Sound it out.
Fat her.
F-A-T-H-E-R. What is that? What word is that?
F-A-T.
Yeah, what is that?
Fat her. Well, fuck you. I'm getting mad. I'm getting mad. I'm serious.
Spell it out together.
F-A-T-H-E-R.
What word is that?
Fat her. Stop.
Father, help us.
I'm getting really fucking upset. F-A-T-H-E-R. Fat her. You guys are making me mad for real.
Alright,
What? F-A-T-H-E-R. English.
what are you
Fat her.
What are you to Isabel?
Daughter.
What?
She's my daughter.
What are you?
What
to
are you
her?
to Isabel?
Her father.
How do you spell father?
F-A-T-H-E-R. Oh. All right. Father. Oh my God. I feel like an idiot.
Okay, so we're so close, right? The Bible talks about the word is nigh thee, even in your mouth. Okay, that there is a word that's so close to you. There's a position that's so close to you. But if you're not careful, if you get in a space, it's so funny. I was thinking about this the other day, and it's so amazing. And this video just really solidified it for me. And that's why I shared it with you, because I was just having this conversation with someone. I couldn't remember the initiation of the conversation to go back to the story that I was sharing in order to give you this information. And here this video came up in my path yesterday, and I said, oh, perfect. Because what happens is, because you've been told a thing, right? And this is why this is so important. Because there are some things that we've been told. There are some things that we've heard. The scripture says faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word. The Bible says that. Scripture is the first 5 books in the Old Testament, which is the Pentateuch, and then the prophets and Psalms and Proverbs. So I just wanted to make that clear, because we do say that. We say the scripture says, but the Bible says this. I'm gonna clarify this. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the word. So how does faith come? It comes by hearing. But do you know that faith for anything comes by hearing? That's exactly how we identify with things. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing. So anything that you've heard over and over again, okay? Anything that you've heard over and over and over again, if you keep giving yourself to the hearing of that thing, you're going to have faith for it. And this is a responsibility of sons, right? Even when the scripture deals with us on how our minds should be operating, he says, listen, I'm going to give you what to think on. I'm going to tell you how to position your mind so you'll have peace. Keep your mind on me. And I'm going to tell you what to think of and how to think. And by the way, that other scripture is Romans chapter 10, verse 17. Faith comes by hearing. I'm going to give you what to think. I'm going to show you how to utilize your mind to position yourself. And so this is what the adversary is always after. He's after the mind of the matter. Because if he can get after that mind of that matter, then he has it. He's got you. That's what he did in the garden. He got into the mind of the matter. He said, is that what the Father said? You know what? I've been knowing him for a long time. And I'm going to tell you what I know about him, right? I know that that's not what he means by that. What he really is hiding from you, right? And so that's a position. It's a place, because often people somehow are thinking that the Father is taking something away from us instead of giving us something. So when he's asking us for something, we're thinking something's being taken when something is actually being given. When he opens up his mouth, he said, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth. So if you're going to live, that means whatever comes out of his mouth is spirit, it's life, it's the same breath that was breathed in the Adam's nostrils that made him an alive mind, a will, and an emotion, made him animated, gave him animation, divine animation for him to be able to function as a son in the earth, okay? So every time he speaks a word, it is life. When he speaks a word through his servants, it is life. Now, I'm going to tell you something that's going to be very crucial in this season. And a lot of people are going to be very damaged over this season because they have been broken in other seasons. Notice what I'm about to say. They have followed the counterfeits. And because they have followed the counterfeits, they don't think anything else is real. But it was their error to follow the counterfeits. And so somebody might say, well, they didn't know. Okay, well, it's given to us to know. So the only way we will be able to pass those kind of tests is if we apply ourselves to the body of work, which is the word of God. If we apply ourselves to the body of work and connect ourselves in a place where we can learn and we can grow. You know, seeds will never grow in an environment that they're not fit for. If you align yourself, if you realize that something that you're doing is not producing anything, then you have to change your position. When you realize that if I'm in a space and I'm not growing and I don't know anything, and I keep finding myself pressed up against the wall without the information I need to come out, then that means you need to change your position. When you get from in this corner, you're going to need to change your position. You're going to need to do something different, right? So here's the thing. Faith definitely comes by hearing. And so what we lend ourselves to over and over again, we're going to start believing that. And it could be so false. This man is saying, fat her. And they've asked him multiple times, put it together. What does it say as a word? And he's still saying fat her. And he said, but I'm speaking English. Yeah, you're speaking English, but you're not speaking the language. And this is one of the things that has been really crucial for us, that we've got to begin to learn to speak the language of the age. Whatever the language of the kingdom age is, we need that language, not just the language of the age that we're in or the time that we're in, but we need the language for the time that we're in, the divine language that needs to be spoken for the time that we're in, okay? We're coming up into a new year, and that new year is going to be so powerful, but the Father right now is positioning us for the new. And this process that we're going through, we must go through it. We must be challenged, and we must be tried in order for us to be optimally performing. Okay, this is what happens when we give ourselves to that space that He's putting us in. A lot of people like to complain. They like to rather complain than say thank you. It's something I was sharing with somebody I love the other day. Listen, you got to change your posture. You got to change your position, because the body of work is before you, but you're not giving yourself to the body of work. One of the things that He told us to do was in everything give thanks. If we learn to give thanks in everything, not for everything. He didn't say for, He said in. He said no matter what position you find yourself in, you ought to understand that thank you is the only conversation we need to be having. Thank you is the only emotion that you need to be having. Why do you need to have a thank you as the response, as the emotion, as that place that animates you? Because you know your God. This is what the Father is communicating in this season. He's saying too many people are saying they know me, but they don't really know me. Because the word says that you shall be strong and do exploits if you know Him. You'll be strong. Strong doesn't just mean muscles, as in your physical muscles. It means you'll have strength. It means you'll have courage. It means you'll be able to bear the weight of the challenge to get to the place of the finish. Strong and do. You'll have strength to do. He said, my grace, my God ability is sufficient, Paul. It's the same grace that He gives to the sons. grace that is sufficient, his ability, because we're surviving off his breath. We love to read those scriptures. You know, we say it's in him I live, move, and have my being. But do we really assimilate the things that are coming out of our mouths? Because when we go into that space of complaining, what we're saying is that he's not in charge. He's not ruling. That he's not who he says he is. Okay? He's in, not only is he in charge, but he's put us in charge in the earth to have dominion over every part of creation. The only thing we're not supposed to have dominion over is one another. Now, do we lead? Yes, we can lead one another according to how he's given us to lead. And that's the part I wanted to get back to, because it doesn't mean that there won't be leadership. There is divine kingdom order, okay? But it's his order. It's not our own. It's not our programs. It's not none of that. It's the thing that he inspires that's going to lead us and guide us into all truth. That thing that he gives the leader is going to be the thing that leads and guides us into all truth. Look at Moshe. He's led back to Egypt. He's led back to the place that he was born in, that he was formed in. He's run off from that place because he doesn't find his identity in that space anymore. And by the way, when he began to identify himself and operate from his identity, he wasn't received. So he had to run off. And this is a real thing. You got to leave some spaces in order to come back to some spaces. The Father will cause you to leave some spaces just to come back and be a deliverer. He did it with Joseph as well. He left a space, but he was a deliverer. They had to come into his space in order to be delivered. I'm telling you that this is a real thing. You're going to be put in a position. And when you're put in that position, right, then you got to know what you're supposed to be doing. What if Moshe had never turned around to see that bush and identify why it was burning and not being consumed? What if he was just like, oh, I don't know what that is. Some weird stuff happening over there. I don't have nothing to do with that. I'm just going to go ahead and watch these sheep. I'm going to go ahead and watch this flock and mind my business. No. And what if he had told himself, you know what? That last conversation I had with that Hebrew, with my brethren, I need to go back and see if they're okay. I need to go back and deliver them. See, I'm giving you something right now because it's crucial that we understand the sending, not just the going. Okay? We have to understand the sending. You might have some things on your mind. You might have a desire to do something, and it's not a terrible desire to do something, but the question is that what the Father has authorized? Is that what he's saying? Okay? Paul in one season said John Mark couldn't go. John Mark was a part of one of their journeys in another season, but he found John Mark to be unreliable. Yeah, John Mark had financial backing, but John Mark was not reliable when it came to the things of God. He was not reliable when it came to being consistent in kingdom work. Okay? He was more subject to run off from somewhere. What if he had to take in John Mark with him the time he took Silas? He would have wound up in prison either by himself or with somebody that's going to complain. But he took Silas. He said, John Mark can't go right now. But later on in ministry, he was able to let John Mark back into his space. I'm telling you right now, there are times when the Father is calling us to separate ourselves from some things. Why? Because we need to be formed. We've got to be formed. We got to be formed to perform the thing that he's talking to us about. But it's difficult to do the thing that he's calling you to do in an environment that doesn't believe it. Are you listening to what I'm saying? It's difficult to do the work that he's calling you to do in an environment that doesn't believe it. I have encountered such levels of disbelief in this season. It's so amazing to me. I've seen people get up out of wheelchairs. I've seen all kinds of stuff in this season. And do you know that a lot of these people, because it goes back to what this guy here, they're so beholden to the thing that was their captive. They're so beholden to how they saw a thing, right? That old way of seeing it. They were used to seeing themselves sitting in that chair. So when the Father brought them out of the chair, yes, they were excited. They were extremely exuberant. But the moment they got back in a space, right? They got back in the chair and they began to say, well, the chair is comfortable, so that's why I sit in the chair. I'm not sitting in it because I'm ungrateful, in other words, that I was able to walk. No, I'm sitting in the chair because it's comfortable. So you would rather be comfortable in your captivity than be a little uncomfortable in your healing for a moment? Because see, it's a mind thing. Well, the chairs are too low. Okay, well, let's bring a pillow. Let's bring something that elevates you for now. But you're going to have to exercise your limbs in order to get in a space where you can do this thing regularly. But if you stop exercising your limbs, then you're going to go right back to the atrophy and to that place that you were before. Right? So the Father's calling us out of that space. He's calling us out of that space. He's saying, listen, I know that this is the way you were seeing a thing. I know that this is the way you were thinking a thing. But we've got to be sent. It's wonderful to love people. It's absolutely wonderful to love people. But I'm telling you right now, I've told the leaders that I'm connected to, a lot of the people that I'm connected to, listen, I'm doing mutually beneficial relationships in this season. Anything that's not mutually beneficial, count me out. Why? Because I have done things for people. I have helped people build. Okay? I've helped people build things that they are still being sustained by today. Yet I had to start over because they were not honorable. Okay, so mutually beneficial in relationships is important. Now, in relating, if I'm relating to someone that I don't know and I'm just called to do something for them or called to bring them into a space or a place, called to give them the word, called to disciple them, I don't expect anything from them. But when we are in a relationship, now I have an expectation. The Father's not expecting anything relationally from somebody that he's just introducing himself to. But as we are growing and as you're committing to the relationship, yes, there are some things that he has an expectation of at that point. So there are things that we have to make sure that we are sent to, not that we just go to. Okay. And he's separating us from things that we just, we have this big compassion. There's nothing wrong with compassion, but compassion can become a captive as well. Your compassion can make you a captive. You hear what I'm saying? Because then you wind up in spaces doing things for people that need to be processed, that need to go through their process. We're not called to be gods to people. We're called to be leaders and called to be examples. We're called to be living epistles, but we're not called to be their God. So I'm not supposed to be there every time you get in a jam. I got to be there in order. I have to be there to pull you out. No, I can trust the Father with you. Even as a friend, I can trust the Father with you. I can trust him. Now, if he calls on me for something, I'm going to respond. If you say something to me and it's in and I have it, I'm going to give it to you. Why? Because that's how love functions, right? But we got to be sent, not just going into spaces. All right. So let's look at this real close. He says, I was talking about this fish that vomited Jonah out of its mouth onto this land. Now, the funny thing about this land is that the land that the fish vomited Jonah out on, the deity that they worship was a fish god. Now, come on now. As we're talking about this thing, about being in the right position, about going where we're being sent, not just going where we feel like we need to be, going where we feel like we're needed, but going where we are sent. It's got to be mutual. It's got to be mutual. I got to be able to depend on you if you're dependent on me. I got to be able to depend on you. Paul said it like this. If I give you spiritual things, it's not far-fetched for you to give me earthly things. That's the trade. That's how it works, right? So I got to be able to depend on you is what he's saying. When I'm pouring out, I got to be able to depend on you when I need something. But of course, that's not necessarily the age that we live in, because people, thankfully, that's not my people, but people will sit at your feet and suck the very life out of you and leave you there for dead. I was saying the thing about mutual benefiting things and in this, that I've helped people build things that are sustaining them, and I had to keep starting over. At some point, I had to learn, listen, I can't keep doing this. I'm not going to keep doing this way. So now when I create things, or now when I say things, I create the thing, and I may attach your name to it, but it's not your stuff. You understand what I'm saying? Why? Because he gave it to me. And if he gave it to me and I just hand it over to you, not even knowing what you're going to do, it was my baby. It was what he birthed out of me. Right? So we've got to be mindful to cover and to not only to carry what he's given us, but to cover it after it's born. After it's formed, we got to cover it. So listen to what the Father does. He creates a big fish, a great fish. From the beginning of time, he creates a big fish for Jonah, because he knows Jonah behind is going to run. He knows it. If you remember this word that he gives to Peter, which is related to Jonah, he says, Peter, son of Bar Jonah. right? Son of Jonah. Why is he calling it? Because he says you have a propensity to run. So he knew Jonah was going to run. Just like he knew Peter was going to, just like the master knew Peter was going to run. Okay? But there were mechanisms in place to make sure that they made it to the destination. The Father creates a great fish. Okay? And he spits him out on the land. I'm not going to even go into the 3 days and 3 nights today. That's a deep conversation. That type in shadow, right? Spits him out on a land where the deity that is worshipped in that land is a fish god. Half man, half fish. How orchestrated is the God that we serve, okay? He gave him the credibility. And we were talking about this the other day when we were talking about Moshe. When we were talking about Moshe and him going back to Egypt, what did the Father have to do? He had to make him credible in the environment he was sending him to. So he taught him some things. He taught him what he needed to do. And why this is so important is because, like I was telling you before, we've been bamboozled. We've literally been hoodwinked. I'm telling you, you've been hoodwinked into believing some things that are not so. And in those moments when you had the thought, you know what? This is how I'm going to function. This is what I'm going to do. And you thought, oh, well, that's not godly. That's not, no. It's because you were taught something very specific and it was taught out of its context that you don't understand that when you're in an adversarial position, that there is a need to respond. Okay? This is what got Jezebel pushed out of a window. Okay? Jehu said, throw her down. Yeah, push her. Why? Because yes, while we do wrestle with spiritual wickedness in high places, right? While we do wrestle, not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and all the powers of the darkness of this age, right? While we do wrestle, there are people that make themselves available as vessels and vehicles for those spirits. And when they do that, then they position themselves for destruction. And we've got to make sure that we're not co-signing people that have established themselves in positions of destruction. I heard somebody I love say something the other day, and it was really amazing to hear. However, my thought on it was this. They were like, well, I saw something, and if I had the money to do this, that, or the other, I would do this. And I'm thinking to myself, herein lies the problem with that. While the gesture that you're doing may be a really kind gesture, the question begs, are we to seek the Father before we do certain things, or are we just to move on our feeling? We feel like something's unjust, right? We feel like there's an injustice somewhere. So because there's an injustice, and notice I'm just using somewhere, anywhere, there's an injustice in a space. There's an injustice here or there, right? So I need to be the answer to that. The question is this: is that what the Father is saying? Or is that just how you're feeling? See, there's a big difference between how we're feeling and what the Father is saying. Because if I'm moved by what I'm feeling, I might likely be in the wrong function. But if I'm moved by what he's saying, then I know that everything is aligned and the function that I'm in is going to produce more than what I begin to do. It's going to continue to produce. Okay. But I want to be in the right function, because what I don't want to do, and we talked about this earlier as we were talking about giving, and my daughter brought up this conversation. She brought up this particular point. She said that people are giving, and I mentioned giving to these different leaders, and now they're burned. Now they feel some kind of way, right? So now that they're burned, they're in a space now where they're saying, I'm not going to give to nobody. No, that's the wrong space, because you chose to give to the wrong person because you were not trained in a space. So what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to learn from that situation. Learn from the burn, right? You learn from the burn. You don't let the burn shut you down and you never do something that you should do anymore. Now you have to identify where you should do it. Are you understand what I'm saying? So the question is this what the Father is telling me to do? So there are people that need to be allowed to be processed through their things. They got to be processed. Okay, we can't pull them out of their process all of the time. We can't save them from their process, because when we're saving them from their process, we're becoming their God. This is why it's important for us to identify what the Father is saying, where he's pointing us, and what direction is he pointing us in. Why? Because if you interrupt somebody's process, then you may have their blood on your hands. And I know this sounds like really rough, but it's a real thing. But this means that we have to keep ourselves in a place of humility, because what happens when people feel like they're the answer to someone, right? When they begin to feel like they are the answer. See, I know that as a leader, I'm only an answer to you because he's called me to this. In and of myself, I am not the answer. It is because of his breath in my lungs and my acknowledgement of who he is in me that I am able to be an answer. It's not an answer so that I can pull you to myself, but it's an answer so that you will be drawn to him. It's an answer so that you will see the good works, so that you'll see the things that's being manifested and your attention will be turned to him. So look at this credibility. He gives Jonah credibility in a space, right? That he's sending him to give a word. Because if it had gone any other way, he might have been rejected, right? This is the same thing again that the Father did for Moshe. He said, listen, I'm going to teach you some things. That go that fine line again, because if you just look at what he taught him just on sight, not knowing his Bible, and it was just in a clip and you saw it happening, you would think some things about that. I was thinking about this earlier and I thought it was so sad. It began to make me cry, because I began to just know that this is what it means to be touched by the feelings of infirmity. This is what it means to understand that as the master was, so are we. This is what it means to understand that we're no greater than our master. And when I say no greater, that means that what he processed through, we'll have to process through the same, because he said greater works, though, we were going to do, because he's gone to the Father. But what it means to be no greater than the master means that if he was tried in areas, if he was tested in areas, if he experienced some things in his emotions and in his body, all these different things were experiences that he had. Why? So that he would be one that would be able to be touched with the feeling of our infirmity. He wouldn't quit. He wouldn't give up. No, he felt what we would feel. And he wouldn't give up until he accomplished what he needed to accomplish to bring us out of that space, to bring us out of that place. So I was really sad, because I was thinking about how many churches would the master be welcome in the age that we live in? Would he even be welcome? Like they was having a fit about him in the day he was in. But based on the information, the false information that's been given to people over the ages, over this time, based on the false information that's been given, how would they even see him as anything but somebody that was heretical, somebody that was opposing the doctrines of the church, right? No, he came to bring a whole nother kingdom, which is why, as the disciples were asking, Master, when are you going to bring the kingdom? When shall the end of things be? And they were bringing his attention to the buildings. Look at how beautiful the temples are. He said, listen, not one stone shall be left upon another. I want y'all to read those kind of verses. Read that. Read that and identify with what the master is. What does he mean by that? He's saying, listen, that's not even a value right now. I'm bringing a kingdom that makes you the temple. I'm the temple right now. This makes you the temple. This is the place where the Father wants to dwell. Sure, you might have a space where you go to that you gather in, but to make that thing the priority is a whole problem, because you're going into that space, but you're not coming out to do anything. You're going into a space to do something, and you won't do nothing when you get out of that space. All your doings are for the four walls. All of your doings. That's the whole sum total of what you're called to is the four walls. And that now is the gospel. That's the ministry. No, the ministry is the kingdom. It's always been the kingdom, and it will always be the kingdom. All right. So this is what he had to make sure Jonah understood. Listen, I'm sending you somewhere, and you don't have the liberty, if you say yes to me, to do it your way. You're going to need to do it my way. Matter of fact, I love these people so much. Can I tell you something? The Father will love people that you don't like. He'll love people you don't like. And he'll send you to say things that are very challenging, not only to them, but to you to say, right? But you must deliver the message. You must deliver the message. He sends them to this place, and he makes sure that he's credible in the space. Okay? But look at this. As I sat there, I began to think about all the things that are kind of like that scenario about the elephant in the room. And so he gave me this concept. This is where bursting at the seams is coming from. He gave me this concept. He said, there's a whale in the fish tank. You know, when fish are born, they're small, right? But all fish have distinctive looks. They have distinctive looks. And anybody that breeds fish would know what a fish is, right? And if it's something that's unusual or out of the normal identity of something, they're going to go and find out, well, what is this? Because this doesn't look like the normal fish that we put in tanks. This looks like something else. And I thought it was funny because we're often talking about the elephant in the room, but he began to show me this image. And in the image, there was a whale. I referred to it as a shark earlier. Just understand it's a big fish. It's a fish that doesn't belong in the fish tank, okay? But the original idea was this whale. It's a whale in the fish tank, okay? And nobody sees this whale. Nobody recognizes or can identify this thing, that this is not like, this don't look like the normal fish that are in fish tanks. So they just say, oh, this is unique. I like it, right? They're just kind of okay with it. But the thing begins to grow and grow and grow like the elephant in that room. And it's not being addressed, you know? And the issue is that it's going to become catastrophic at the point you should have realized it before it. But at the point you don't have time to correct it, now it's catastrophic. By the time you realize that you've been lied to, by the time that you realize that you've been told things that were not actually biblical, but they sounded good. Remember, we were watching the book of Eli, some clips from the book of Eli. What was the man? What was Carnegie talking about? He said, listen, I just need that book. Why? Because all religions use that book. Did you know that? Did you notice that? I don't care what religion it is. They refer to that book. Why? Because there's credibility that comes from that book. And they understand that if they can become an authority on that book, then that makes them credible because the law is written on the table of your heart. So there's some kind of connection there. But we are commanded. There's a mandate for us to begin to identify where he is. Where is the Father? Who is speaking? That's something that happens in maturity. You can't just be triggered by words. You can't just be triggered by things. Oh, if somebody says God, oh, they're a believer. No, they're not. We live in an age where, first of all, there are all kinds of gods. And the scripture talks about this. Gods, there are many. We'll get into some of those things in a more intimate setting because that's a lot of conversation. And maybe I'll share some of those things. But there are many gods. Do you know there are people walking around, church people walking around, Christians walking around talking about there's only one God? No, it's not. No, it's not. That's not biblical. That's not even a biblical statement. There's only one God. No, gods, there are many. As a matter of fact, the Father sits on a council that he rules the gods. He has a whole pantheon where he is the God over the gods. Psalm 82:6 is one of those spots where you identify that. And what I understand, based on that understanding and other scriptures that prove that he is the God of gods. It says that, right? King of kings, Lord of lords. He is over all. Okay, but there are things that are under him. There are other lords. There are other gods. There are other princes. There are other kings. Okay, but he's over it all. And to have the mentality that, oh, he's the only God. No, he's the true and living God, but he is not the only. But if you have that mentality, then when you're challenged by another God to come into the worship of that God, you don't even know that that's what that is. So you'll begin to worship something, not know and thinking that you're worshiping the God that you say you worship, but wind up in another space of worship. We've got evidence for that. We were talking about this the other day, how Paul went into Athens and he was moved in his spirit because he identified that the whole city was wholly consumed by idolatry. They had all of these idolatrous things, all of these things that they gave their allegiance to, things that they were devoted to. And in the midst of all of that is this situation that says to the unknown God, to the unknown God. Oh, he's just in the midst of all of this. In the midst of all of this worship is this God that they don't know, but he's in the midst of their worship. The Samaritan. This is what the conversation was between the Mashiach and the woman at the well. He says, listen, you worship what you don't know. You don't even know what you're doing. I'm telling you that the Father is not looking for just your position in your worship, but he's looking for the heart of your worship. He's not just looking for the location. That's what I mean. Not the position, but the location of your worship. But he's looking for the position of the heart. So yeah, y'all go up on the mountain. That's what you were taught. That's how it plays out for you. I get it. That's what y'all been doing. But what I'm telling you is that he's seeking such to worship him in the spirit of truth. This is a spiritual thing. It's not a natural thing at all. It's not just according to the lifting of your hands, because your hands can be lifted and your heart be far. It's not just according to what you say, because your mouth could speak, but your heart not say the same. It's not according to just what you do, because you could be doing things, but doing them all for the wrong reasons. He said, no, spirit and truth. The spirit of truth is what he's after. He's seeking such to worship him. In other words, he's looking for worshipers. That's what he's always looking for. Why? Because the worshiper, the heart of the worshiper draws him close to them. And where he is, where he's located, there is liberty. There is freedom. And there is power. Hello? There is liberty, there is freedom, and there is power where he is. So look at this. The fish, this great fish, this whale is in this fish tank. And for me, this represents all of the things that we've been told. It's in this tank. It's in this concealed space. Well, we know that a whale goes into a larger space than this, but it's in this tank and ain't nobody saying nothing. And it's continuing to grow. The false concepts. Okay? They're continuing to grow. Us not understanding that the reason that the concepts were given was to continue to make us captives, right? All of the false concepts. I saw this whale as a baby in the fish tank, and then I heard these words. Nobody gonna talk about this whale in the fish tank? Nobody don't notice this? Nobody's gonna say anything about this whale growing in the fish tank? And as the vision continued to progress, the whale began to grow in size. And then it came to a point where the tank began to fracture because of the whale's girth in the tank. So now the whale is running out of room. And the tank is now fracturing. It's kind of cracking in spaces. Water's not leaking yet, but it's cracked. And the word of the Lord was, still nobody saying nothing about this whale in the tank. It was almost to the point of bursting. And nobody was still having any conversation. This is where we are in the earth. Things are happening all around us. And the only thing people can talk about is come in and let's worship. Come in and let's sing these songs. Let's read a couple verses of scripture. Let's hoop and holler a little bit. Let's dance. Let's have a good time. And then let's go back to positions. Go back to our mundane positions. The Father's calling for much more. That is not the greater work. That ain't it. Because there's a world that's dying. And there are people that belong to him that still need to be gathered for what's happening in this end. There are things we're not going to be able to push back, that we're not even called to push back. Yes, we do have authority and dominion over the earth. We absolutely do. But there are some things that have been being restrained that are no longer going to be restrained. And if we don't know that, then we'll be praying against things that are supposed to happen. We'll be praying against the thing that the Father has ordained. He's ordained it as an answer to the debauchery. He's ordained it as an answer to the filthiness that the earth is taking on. And the only space that the sons will feel in that point is making sure that we gather all of the sons and make sure that they understand what the mandate is, that they understand what the mission is, that they understand their authority in that space. You do remember the 3 Hebrew boys, right? They were put in fire, but they were not burnt by it. You do remember the master. He was walking on the thing that he should have been going under based on the buoyancy and based on the weight, the gravity of his body on that water. He should have been under it, but he was on it. You do recall that there were commands to stop the sun. Joshua stopped the sun, made it stand still so he could finish his fight. So I'm saying there are things that you will be able to do, right? But it's going to be specifically for the hub, for the people of Yah. And then maybe there will be some that run to that light. I used to have this dream all the time. It was a reoccurring dream. And I was in my grandmother's house, which now is torn down. But this is the dream would keep reoccurring, which was the information that I needed in the dream, not just the location, right? In the dream, I was in my grandmother's house. And I noticed that on the streets, there were all kinds of catastrophes that had taken place. There was a crashed plane on the street. There were all kinds of things that were just out of place based on catastrophic events. But I came out of my house. First of all, my lights were on, and no other house on that block had lights but mine. No other house had lights but my house. And I came out in the daytime, and I would go into my yard, which I had somehow purchased all of the houses, all of the land that was next to the house. So I was going, they hadn't been torn down yet, but the yards were all connected. I connected my yard to all of those places that I had purchased. And I was going to gather my harvest out of the yard so I could go back in the house. And it was just a matter of fact thing to me. It wasn't like I wasn't moved by what was taking place in the earth. I wasn't moved by the catastrophes that were taking place, and they weren't affecting me. So I would go out and I would get from the harvest and come back into the house. But the reason why the light is there is for those who have no light to come to it. Are you hearing what I'm saying? Those that have no light to be desirous after the light and to come to it and say, how is it that you have light and I don't? How is it that you're in this position and I'm not? Do you know that the position is not just a financial position? It's not just financial. People in Hawaii, a whole city is being burned down. Do you hear me? A whole city. And this is not the first time we've seen this. This is not the first time we've seen this. And you're going to see a whole lot more of it. You're going to see a whole lot more of this before this year is done. And by next year, it's going to be some things that don't even exist anymore. Because this is the response. This is the wrath of Yah in the earth, a response to the wickedness that is set up in the earth right now. So there are some things that are being constrained. I was saying this. There are some things that have been constrained. But I believe that the constraint is coming off. And a lot of people don't even know what that looks like. No less than the children of Israel understanding that wilderness that they were walking through, the wilderness that they were walking through in that time, they were complaining. They had a bunch to say and didn't really realize the protection that they were under. They didn't even realize that they were being protected. Let's read this. Now we beseech you. I'm in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 1. I'm going to read this. Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Master, the Mashiach, and by our gathering together unto him. Listen to this. That ye be not soon shaken in mind, or be troubled, neither by spirit, nor by word. I'm going to read this again. That ye be not soon shaken in mind. What is the adversary after? He's after the mind. That's the battlefield that he's after. He's after the mind, because in your mind you war. You're going to either war against him or against yourself. You hear what I'm saying? That you be not soon shaken in mind or be troubled. Here it goes. Neither by spirit nor by word, nor by letter as from us, as that the day of the Mashiach is at hand. Let no man deceive you by any means. Don't be deceived. Because here's the reality. That day shall not come except there be a falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. This is really whom everybody's waiting on. We're talking about ignorance, right? How often have you heard that we're waiting on the Antichrist to arise? We keep hearing that same thing over and over and over again. But the scripture just declares, the Bible declares to us, the Bible declares to us that there are many antichrists, and antichrists have already gone out into the earth to deceive the masses. Anti, meaning against the appointed one, okay? Against the anointed. Anointing deals with appointments. Against the appointment. That's already happening. What people are really waiting on is the son of perdition. Right? But if you don't know what you're waiting for, then you don't know what to look for. So let's look at what the son of perdition is. All right, let's look at it for a minute. The son of perdition is driven by a wasting spirit. And when I say wasting spirit, I'm talking about wasting as in destroying. Okay? Causing things to die. It's a spirit. The spirit that drives the son of perdition is a spirit of ruin and destruction. Wait a minute, I got another one for you. The spirit of the son of perdition is a spirit of money. I know. Yep. And that doesn't mean that we don't need it. It's a tool. But when we begin to be led by it, then we're being driven by the spirit of mammon, which we'll talk about next week. The spirit of mammon, because we need to still talk about the difference between wealth and riches, because the sons have to now be positioned. We need to allow the Father who has said, I cause you to get wealth. It's me. We got to understand what wealth is, what riches are, because it's not money. Are you listening to what I'm saying? So let me ask you a question. Based on what I told you the son of perdition is, based on who I told you he is, you should be able to recognize that already exists. We're already there. We're already there. Blessings to those that are coming on. We are already there. We're already in that space, and people are thinking they're going to get off this rock. Why would he make the people that he gave the rock get off the rock? Why would he take the dominion from the sons when the kingdom is going to be given to the sons? Well, why would he do that? Huh? This spirit of death and destruction. Useless death. Devoted to this perishing or this ruin. That's this spirit that's behind the son of perdition. I don't even believe son of perdition just speaks to one person. I believe that is, even as it is with the Mashiach, right? So it is with the son of perdition. The son of perdition, it says son of, right? Which means he's a part of something. He's birthed from something. Just like we are birthed, born of God, right? And the master, what he did in finishing that work, now we are born of that nature. We're born of that kind. The kind that has authority in the earth. That authority has been restored to us. Because in a fallen state, you're not operating in that space. In a fallen state, you may be operating, but you're not operating in a space of authority under the kingdom's guidelines. You may be doing all kinds of things, but the kingdom authorizes its sons to do what it authorizes them to do. In order to reveal the power of our God, the power of our King in the earth, for men to see that good work, for men to see that and glorify him. That's the whole point of the light. The story I was telling you about the light in my house. No other lights on the block but at night. And it was there for people to come to it. But in the dream, I hadn't yet had any visitors. So maybe this is the season of going back to that dream to identify what the Father wants more concerning that, or how I need to be positioned. Because in that dream, there were no visitors yet. There were still people, but there were none visiting. So here we go back to the fish tank for a hot minute, and then I'm about to get off. This fish has grown to the point that this tank is about to burst, and still nobody's saying anything. This is not okay. This is the world that we live in, and still nobody's saying anything. Yeah, we're complaining about stuff. When I say saying something, see, we going back to this whole kinetic prayer piece, right? This kinetic prayer dimension is all about what we're saying. I told you we're coming in to the 84, or on the Gregorian calendar, which is a whole conversation. I'm always referring to the difference in those things. And I was telling you that there are many gods. The Gregorian calendar speaks of the Gregor, which are the fallen ones. But this is the time. This is the calendar. This is who has seized the time. So when you hear me saying that you got to become a master of the time, when I say you got to become a master of the time, that's your position in the earth. Then that also makes you a master over the Gregorian. Are you listening? Because you're entering into an eternal time once you master the time. I don't want to go too far into this because I've got to give you more conversation around this. But those of you that can identify with this, those of you that can say, you know what, I'll look into that. I'll study that. I'll look into that. Redeeming the time. How do you redeem the time? Because it's something that you know that gives you access over the time that exists to bring you into another space in time. Nobody's saying anything. All these things are happening. And we're praying at things, or we are trying to push back things. I was talking about the thing that's being held back. So let's go back to 2 Thessalonians really quickly. 2 Thessalonians. Let me go back there. Take me back. 2 Thessalonians. I was just there. I might have to pull it up. Oh, here we go. Yeah, here we go. 2 Thessalonians. So we're talking about this destroyer, this son of perdition, right? That's already happening. So that gives us a location. But I want you to see something. I already read it, but I want to say it again, because based on this son of perdition, right? This destroyer, this ruiner, based on the nature and the spirit of that thing. It says this in verse 3. In the beginning of verse 3, it says, that day shall not come except there first be a falling away. A falling away from what? You know, people are frustrated about people leaving church. That ain't the issue here. The issue is that people have long fallen away from the kingdom. They've long fallen away from the God that they say they serve. They've long fallen away from that because they have some other perception, some other identity of who that is. They don't even know who that is. They don't even have relationship with him. They're doing a bunch of things with no relationship with him, thinking that the thing that they've imagined in their own heart, the thing that they created, their idol that they've set up within themselves, they're worshiping that idol as God, as the God of gods. No, it is a God, but it's not him. A falling away. People want to relegate that to, oh, they're talking about, it's a falling away. People leaving the church. No, they're leaving the things of Yah. Because what if the powers that think they be just went on a frenzy and just started blowing up all the churches, all the buildings, all the church buildings? Would you not still need to be the body that he's calling for? So if we put all our eggs in the basket of these buildings, right? Then what are we building? Because other than buildings, the people are not built. They're just going into buildings to do services. The Father's calling for a people that are built up in him. This is what he's calling for. It says here, there's going to be a falling away. And we're already past that. It says this son of perdition opposes and exalteth himself above all that is called God, or that is worship, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. I'm going to end it right there. I don't think I'm going to say nothing else tonight. Because if you can't understand that verse and you can't meditate on what I've been telling you to get clarity that he sets him, he's not even establishing himself in a White House. He's not just trying to establish himself in government or politics. No, he's going to do it from a place that most people in the earth are touched from. I don't care if a person goes to church or they don't go to church. Everybody in the earth has been touched by religion on some level. They've been touched by religion on some level. Are you listening? On some level, they've been touched by religion. So what does he want to do? He wants to get in that space where that emotional space where the triggers are happening. You know, so if somebody says, oh, I thank God, then all of a sudden they're a believer. Well, they might be a Christian, but that don't make them a believer in kingdom. It doesn't make them a believer in the God of gods. They might have a God that they serve. So when they say, I thank God, they might not even be talking about the God that you're talking about, but because you're triggered, because you got word triggers, automatically you go into that space. I'm looking at those things happen even in this time. Leadership being bamboozled by their religious doctrines and their religious identities of things. And so it's easy for us to go into these spaces where we're talking about equity and inclusion. Show me that in the scripture. Show it to me. Show me that. Because it's not there. Because there are some things that we're not to be aligned with. There are some things. Now, does that mean we don't love people? It doesn't mean that at all. I've loved a lot of people that have a lot of things going on with them. The majority of my life, I've been exposed to some things. And I've always loved those people. But I also was very clear on my position. And I don't bite my tongue about my position. Because if I bite my tongue about my position and include, and it's a thing of inclusion, then you'll think the God that I serve is down with that. You'll think the God that I serve is good with that. Because, you know, that's just what's going on in the earth right now. Everybody's on this, we gotta love everybody. Okay. It's some stuff the Father hates. It's some things that he hates. He even said of Esau, I hate him. Why? Because he don't have a value for the things that concern me. He doesn't have a value for that. And when I say hate, I'm not dealing with the term of hate that we think about in our 21st century mindset. Hate means it's something that I despise, that I detest, that I see as an opposition to my king, that I see as something that opposes the king that I serve. It says that this thing exalts himself above all that is called God, or that is worship, so that he as God sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. It means he positions himself in a way that makes people bow. He positions himself in a way that makes people need him. This is the time that we're going into, the space that we're going into, where all of these different shocks, they're calling them global shocks, okay? All of these different shocks in the earth. And Elder Vicky, you know, we've talked about that shock and awe factor. We've talked about that before, okay? We've had conversations about that, the Hegelian dialectic. We've talked about that. That I'm going to create a problem so that I can be the solution to the problem. We're in that space, and we've been in that space for a long time, but we're going into this space deeper now, where the powers that think they be are creating issues to be the solution to. You think that though that city in Hawaii, which was a tourist town, you think that city in Hawaii where people had businesses that were built up and their houses were burned down and all that, you don't think that that's a part of an agenda? That thing is happening in different states and in different places? Tornadoes and hurricanes and all of these different things happening all at the same time. Used to be we had to get past one to get to the next. Now this all happening in different places at the same time. And fires and all of these things. You don't think that that's a part of an agenda? They're positioning themselves to be the answer. They're positioning themselves for you to bow. So if the sons of Yah are not in these regions and they're not doing the mandate that was given, then those sons will be consumed by these issues, by this exaltation of this one. And what that exaltation, what it looks like is them positioning themselves for worship, positioning themselves to be the priority in men's hearts. A lot of people are going to forget about the Father. They're going to completely forget about that they ever were introduced or ever had any identity on that. Because now I need some things that I don't believe that I can find anywhere else. I need it and I need it now. It says, remember ye not that when I was yet with you, I told you these things. There's some things I've been talking about for at least 10 years now. At least 10 in a public setting. 10 to 12 in a public setting. Long before that in private settings. But at least 10 to 12 in a public setting, I've been talking about some stuff. The 5 and the G, right? I've been talking about that for years. And I began to share what it really was. And so when this thing came up, the scamdemic came up, and all of these things began to take course, I understood what it was because these are conversations I've been having. But if you've been sitting in your four walls just learning about a quick Bible story and it's sounding good enough to your flesh for you to shout because somebody's telling you, you're going to win, you're going to win. You're not going to win if you don't know the position. You're not going to win if you don't get in the posture. If you're not in the position to win, how will you? How can you? You're going to win the race. If you're not in the race, how you going to win? You got to get in the race first. And then if you're going to get in the race, that means you got to train for the race. See, it's still about that process. So how you going to win if you've never trained for the win? How? That's what he's calling us to. Nobody's saying anything about these things. And this is why you guys saw in the intro, we're going to be doing the thing with the tabletop sessions, the strategy sessions. If you go to the beginning of the video, you will see the tabletop leadership sessions graphic, right? What is that about? It's about gathering leaders, authentic leaders that understand, no, we've got to come together right now. There's no more option for us to be separate. We've got to come together. We've got to join forces. And this is about the kingdom. It's not about us personally. We don't have time to be, well, whose vision is that? And who came up with that? We ain't got time for that. The people that the Father has called to this hour to be on the front line, they have vision. And it needs to be collaboratively shared amongst one another so that we can accomplish what needs to be accomplished in the earth concerning the sons of Yah. If we're not doing that, then there's going to be nothing short of destruction. There's going to be a lot of destruction. But we won't be able to say 1,000 shall fall at my side and 10,000 at my right hand, but it will not come nigh my dwelling. We'll not be able to say only with my eyes will I see the destruction of the wicked. You know what the preface of that is? Because I make the Lord the Most High my habitation. See, if you're not in the right position, when the destruction comes, then how will you not be subject to it? It's not enough to just get a small prophetic word. It's not enough. It's not enough. We got to understand what we're doing now. That's what kinetic prayer is all about. It's about getting a mature understanding of what prayer really looks like. It's about an object, that being your words, right? Being in the right position, having the right weight. That means it's been processed. You're in a mature space. And when you begin to speak, the momentum begins to happen. And when that momentum happens and it collides or it comes into contact with something else, it's going to do one of two things. It's either going to transfer power, that's the position of discipleship, from person to person, or it's going to destroy something. It's going to make impact with something that it needs to bring down. That's a position of sons for this hour. We got to be able to know what to say. Nobody talking. And when I say nobody, that doesn't mean that there aren't other leaders that are having this conversation. I'm saying at large. And I'm saying particularly with church, nobody's talking about this. Kingdom, yes. The kingdom is having these conversations, but church ain't having these conversations. We still too busy trying to tell people to give so they can get a car. I talked about this earlier, and I'm going to talk about it some more Monday. The reality is the purpose and the position of your giving is going to determine what you're going to give. People still think that when they give, they helping me. No, I'm going to do this to help you. No. You need to do this because you love the Father and you want to partner with me to get the work done. Right? You don't need to give because you're thinking, well, I'm going to give this because they said if I give this $100 or if I give this $200 or if I give this, then the Father's going to do this. No, you need to give because you've been blessed to be a financier of the kingdom. That's a different position. That's not the same position. That's the difference between operating in the spirit of Yah and the spirit of Mammon, which is a god. Mammon is a god. It desires worship. So much so that the Bible says this: you cannot serve both Yah and Mammon. You're going to either have to love one and hate the other, cleave to one and despise the other. You can't serve them both. You can't serve Yah and Mammon. Mammon is a god. It's a God that desires to be worshiped. It's a God that puts your need before the Father. It puts your love or your passion for something. It puts your desire to be in a position before the Father. The word talks about seeking first the kingdom. But if I'm seeking my job first to get the stuff that I need added, then that's a wrong position. That's motivated by the spirit of Mammon. The spirit of Mammon drives men to be motivated by money. Their motivation is money. I know leaders that do lives because they need to collect money to get stuff done. I'm like Paul. I know how to be abased and how to abound. I know how to be full and how to suffer need. There have been seasons that I gave so much of myself and people were not responding like as they should have been. No, I had the right to have an expectation, but I didn't allow that expectation to stop me from doing the work. Because I wasn't motivated by the money. That's on you if you don't give. That's not on me. That's on you if you don't know to do that. Right? But I'm motivated by the mandate. I'm motivated by the mission. And because of that, my needs are always met. Let's look at this Thessalonians piece one more time. 2 Thessalonians. Let's go there one more time. It says, remember ye not that when I was yet with you, I told you these things. The master did the same thing. He said, listen, I told you some stuff because I wanted when it happened for you to be able to say, oh, I know what this is. That's why I said things to y'all years ago, because I wanted when it happened for you to say, I know what this is. But you've been so inundated with false information that now you believe that false information. And the thing that was revealed to you, you no longer believe that you've forgotten that. You've fallen away from that. It says, and now, this is where I want to go. And now ye know what withholdeth, that he might be revealed in his time. Now you know what withholdeth. that he might be revealed in this time. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let, until he be taken out of the way. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom Yah shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders. We done looked at several different situations here. We looked at the son of perdition. Then we looked at the mystery of iniquity. And then we looked at that wicked. This thing have levels, don't it? It has levels. Everything has process. Even darkness follows protocol. Even darkness follows protocols. That word, the wicked, talks about animos, which, if you think about that word, you're looking at animosity, right? Animos. It talks about lawlessness. And when we talk about lawlessness, we're not just talking about people rioting in the streets. We're talking about the fact that nobody, and I mentioned this earlier, nobody is adhering to the Sabbath anymore. When I say at large, I'm talking about the church. And we do have factions that are operating on that. They think it's on a Saturday, which I believe that the Father will honor if they're ignorant of it, but you still got to grow into the knowledge of something. I mean, when we started out following the Sabbath, we were on Saturday until the Father opened that thing up and said, see, when you desire something, the Father responds to that desire. When you're hungering and you're thirsting after the right way, you're going to be filled. If you get stuck, it's because you wasn't really hungry for the right way. You were just hungry for a way. And sometimes it's just a way that's different than every other way. Because that, again, puts you in a posture of a vanity space, It puts you in a prideful space, right? He's talking about people that are departing from the law, a law violator, lawless. That's what he's calling wicked. A transgressor. Nobody at large. I mean, in the kingdom, yes. Kingdom people, yes. The church don't follow that idea of the Sabbath. They say, oh, Sunday is the Lord's day, and that's the whole conversation in and of itself. Where that even came from. You go look at it. Go find it. Go research it. Go research where that term, the Lord's day. Go search the origin of the Lord's day. Go search it out. That's a product of the Catholic Church as well, which is what all churches are a product of. That is the mother of church, by the way. Definitely not the mother of the ecclesia, but she is the mother of church. Catholicism is the mother of church. Go look at it. Lawless. We don't do that anymore. We don't follow those things that he put in place. So we got people saying, oh, well, we're not under the law. No, you're not under the curse of the law. But the master fulfilled the law to prove to you that it could be done. And then he gave you the key to how he fulfilled it. He said, love the Father with all your heart, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. This is the fulfillment of the law and the prophets. This is the fulfillment. He gave the key. But you still have to fulfill it. You just don't have to worry about one by one. Did I break this? Did I break that? No. But there's some very specific things that are in that first group that you gotta look at that thing. Because even one of them is so misconstrued at this point. Thou shalt not steal is so misconstrued. People think, oh, that means don't take stuff from places. And I'm not advocating for you to take things. Okay? But what I am telling you is that that's not what that means. Because the Bible also comes back is that if a thief be found, in other words, if a person was hungry and destitute, if a man was hungry and destitute, was trying to feed his family, and he took from something, he's not guilty of anything. He was simply trying to provide for his household. Now, I know that sounds crazy to Christians. This is in your Bible, though. But it does say this, if the thief be caught, he's got to repay 7 times. Hello? But that word that's in that body, that first body of things that we call the 10 Commandments, there's way more commandments than that. But that first body of things that we call the 10 Commandments, right? It says, thou shalt not steal. Let me tell you how far away we are from the reality of what that means. We are so far away from that we thought it meant what I was just telling you it meant, but it deals with stealing persons. What's one of the most rampant things that has always been very rampant in the earth that we haven't really paid attention to until now? People stealing people. So we thought that when slavery, as we thought of it or as we knew it, was over, because that was a part of thou shalt not steal. So the same people that were using the Bible to make slaves were not abiding by the covenant, were not abiding by the commandment not to steal persons. How hypocritical is this? You're stealing people, which is a breaking of the law, but you're using the Bible as a weapon. You're weaponizing this word to make slaves of people. That word literally is thou shalt not steal persons. If you study, you'll find out it don't have nothing to do with you taking a pen from your job. It has everything to do with stealing persons. And that is still very prevalent in the earth today. And it's a very overlooked thing. Because we're so not aware of it that we don't even know what to look for. I've seen some videos. I'm about to let y'all go. I've seen some videos of late where people were videoing things. And in these videos, they were videoing people that were in areas trying to steal children. Now, that's a real big thing, trying to steal children. Okay? They were trying to abduct children. And so the child was sitting on the bench and some stranger would approach and be like, come on, your mom's looking for you or whatever, right? Why the child is sitting there, I don't know. Maybe their mother went across the way to get popcorn or go to the hot dog stand or whatever. Don't know. But there are people out there capturing this. And the person comes up and is saying, come on, your mom's looking for you. She sent me over here to get you. And so the other stranger that's sitting on the bench, because they're aware of these kind of things, they know what to look for. They're saying, do you know this little boy? Or do you know this little girl? And they're like, oh yeah, their mom sent me over here to do. And then they look at the child and say, do you know that person? And the child says no. And then they take a stand. But again, if you don't know what to look for, see, people could be oblivious and be like, well, it ain't my child. It's not a big deal. But how about when it's your child or it's your grandchild? Wouldn't you want somebody to be concerned about that and be able to look at that and say, something's wrong with this? Now, I see this child sitting here and I see this person walking over. And they're doing a lot of talking. They're doing a lot of wooing. You know what I'm saying? Doing a lot of wooing. And this person doesn't seem to know them. This child, this girl, this boy. I've even seen it with grown women who were abducted. And they were walking around with the captor in an open space. But they were showing different signs and somebody identified them in a space and said, that person is throwing signals of help. And a person comes in and distracts the situation to take the woman away. And somebody else runs off with her to get her out of the situation. I'm telling you, we got to be aware of things. We got to know what we're looking at. The only way to know what we're looking at in this time is to have read the word, because the word gives us clear identification of things. That's why we must study. Gives us clear identification of things. Let me give you this word that I want to please. The Father was talking to me earlier about the prince, and we know him as the prince of the power of the air, right? He said he's the prince who wasn't promoted. So guess what? He doesn't have a throne. Prince is related to principality. So let's think about that level that this thing is on. Let's think about that. Now your seat as a king is in heavenly places, far above powers and principalities and rulers of darkness, right? Far above wickedness. Okay? So what the Father desires you to do is come into that position in this hour concerning your health, concerning our finances, concerning our connections. But see, all of these things are one in our posture in the Father, right? In our time of prayer. What are we talking about when we're in prayer? Because what we need is for the Father to show us what is of value to him right now. What should we have a value for? Father, what should I have a value for in this moment? What should I have a value for in this season? Give me what I should have a value for so that I'll know what I should be looking for and what my expectations should be, what I should be saying and what I should be doing. You will know in this hour all that has been established against you. I'm exposing the battle against you, says the Father. In the realm of the Spirit, I'm exposing the battle against you. You'll have dreams, you'll have visions. You know what I'm saying? You'll be wide awake and have visions. You'll begin to be able to see what's against you. That's necessary in this season. And it's so funny because knowledge has increased. Not just you typing into Google and finding out something. I'm telling you, the knowledge of everything has increased. The realm of the Spirit is open. People have opened up some things in this hour. These adversaries have access in ways they have never had access before. And they don't mind revealing themselves. They don't mind showing themselves. They've actually been walking around in front of us in broad daylight. But if you don't know what to look for, you won't even recognize what you're looking at. He said, I'm going to, in this hour, allow you to know all that has been established against you. I'm exposing the battle against you in the realm of the Spirit. You won't just see naturally, but I am indeed opening your spirit faculties, your spiritual faculties. I'm declaring to you tonight or this morning that your spiritual faculties begin to come into operation. Your spiritual eyes, ears. Come on now. Your spiritual perception, feeling, touching, tasting is going to go another way in this season. You know, he gave me this other word. He said the bite that couldn't kill me. You remember Paul was on that land, on that island after he had been shipwrecked, and he's doing a thing. And while he's doing a thing, this viper jumps out and bites him on the arm. He said it's the bite that won't kill you in this season. You may get bit, but you won't die. You won't be impacted. He said it's going to go another way. It's going to go another way. Hear my call and draw near to me, he said. Hear my call and know that I have positioned you to overcome your enemy. I have dispossessed them and given them over to you. This is why there has to be a gathering of the divine council, the sons of Yah. There has to be a gathering because we've got to discuss the strategies. He's given us some things, but we've got to discuss those things so that we can activate that thing in the earth. He said, listen, I've given them over to you. You remember when the children of Israel went to Jericho? He gave them a strategy. He dispossessed the people. They were terrorized by them even being there. Can I tell you something? The adversaries of the earth are terrorized by your presence in the earth. That's what they're doing. And all of this killing, they're trying to root you out. They're trying to find the sons of Yah. They know that it's not the church. They know that it's not Christians, quote unquote, but they'll use them as casualties to get to the sons. So the sons have to understand their position and understand the strategy of heaven in this moment. We must. He said, I positioned you to overcome your enemy, and I've dispossessed them and given them over to you. All that is required is your following of my commands, and see what I will do. Just watch me. Watch me. The Father used to say this to me all the time when I was a little girl. And I love when he says this. When something's going down or some kind of situation, he says, watch this. I love that. I love that, watch this, because I know something's about to happen. When he says, watch this, I know something's going to happen. You hear what I'm saying? I pray that Holy Spirit brings revelation to you this morning and beyond, okay? And that there's a decision of revocation of all the enemies that desire to not only prevent you from your destined place of freedom, but desire to destroy you so you never arrive. You got to take this thing so seriously that you understand that this is not just about detaining you. This is not just about delaying you. This is about destroying your influence, destroying your impact, destroying your name, destroying your becoming, destroying you getting to the place that the Father promised. Listen, I love you guys. Let's look at this fish tank again. And as it's bursting at the seams, let's say something. Let's talk about this. Let's not just act like we don't see this. Amen. Let's not act like we don't receive that, like we don't see this. There's stuff going on. There's stuff going on with children in this hour that you would not believe. And I'll tell you something. I was doing something online as an adult the other day. I was trying to find an app to download things. I was trying to find a specific app to do something. So I'm studying it out. Even how they got the internet set up right now. It's a little fishy. It's doing weird stuff, right? I'm searching this thing out to find it. I click on a link and it keeps diverting me. And I said, okay, well, that ain't the link. I go to another link and it diverts me to a naked woman sitting on a chair, on a bench. And in the situation, like I glanced at this so fast, I gathered it all in like a matter of seconds, like a matter of very short seconds. I had gathered everything that was on that page. In the left-hand corner, it said pick a action or pick a position or whatever. I said, now look at this devil. This ain't even something I look for, male or female. I ain't doing that. Okay? But this devil redirected my page to something else. And I'm saying, if he redirected me and I know what I'm looking for, what's he doing with your children with those devices in their hands? If he redirected me and I'm specifically looking for something and clicking on something that I believe is the thing that I'm looking for, and I'm being redirected to something vile and vulgar, what is the adversary doing with your children with those unsupervised devices in their hands? I know I keep talking about this, but it's a real thing for me, because I'm telling you, our children are under assault. Our children are under attack. And if an adversary wants to destroy a nation, all he has to do is get their children, because that's the future. He's going to deal with it on the level of the children. Do you know that there are places right now on the earth that are under extinction because they have minimized birth? Now in America, we just abort children. We just abort babies, right? We do mandates like that. But there are other places where they have mandated people not to have more than one child. And now they're in a position of being extinct, because with all the stuff that's happening, there's no survivors. Then what do we have left? There's no way to procreate if you have, what's the word I'm looking for? If you have sterilized the women, how are we going to have a population? We might talk about that next week, because I was looking at some stuff the other week and it just blew my mind. It's not stuff that I'm not familiar with, but it's taken a thing deeper than what I've been really paying attention to. Listen, I love you guys. I thank all of my partners. Thank you. Elder Vicky, thank you for being a partner. All of those that partnered earlier, thank you for being partners. If you want to partner, you can do so. If you want to partner with Ministry this hour, you can do so. All you have to do is send what you're going to partner with. Do I have it right here? I thought I had it. Yep, there we go. You can send it to Cash App, or you can, if you want to send it via Zelle, you can contact me and I'll give you that information. Next week, I'll have that information on the screen, so we don't have to do this anymore. I'll have that information on the screen. And if you need to get in touch with me for the tabletop sessions, you can get in touch with me at my email, apostlecrystal@gmail.com. All right. I appreciate you guys. Listen, the body is not a me thing, it's a we thing. Listen, enjoy your weekend. Identify what the Father is speaking to you about. Don't just be passing the day away and not understanding the bigger picture. You know, we really got to get in a space where we can identify, okay, what's the long term here, Father? What are you talking about? What do you need me to be positioned for? Because your position is going to affect other people in your life. If you're not positioned, they will never respect your Father. They'll never respect your God if you don't get in a position. My children respect the God that I serve. You understand what I'm saying? I'm their mother, but they respect the God that I serve. That's who they serve. Even even if you got children that are not necessarily in the fold right now, you don't see them in the fold. I'm telling you what they're waiting for. They're waiting to see something they've never seen. They're waiting to see a convincing conversation, to hear a convincing conversation, because the position you're in now, if the Father changes that position, if you allow him to change that position by being processed, because you see the bigger goal, you see the bigger vision, right? And you begin to process yourself to walk into that space, they're going to see something drastically different. And they're going to say, you know what? I'm going to have to find out what you own, because I never thought I would see that. That's something right there. That's something to see. Don't get comfortable. Become. Don't get comfortable. Become. You hear what I'm saying? Thank you to those that are watching by the replay. Listen, like, and subscribe if you haven't already. Again, watch the videos more than once. Make sure that you share. And we'll be back next week for our 7th week of Kinetic Prayer Dimensions. 7th week next week. And I'm looking to find you, to see you. You know who you are. You know who you are. I love you guys. Peace to your house. The body's not a me thing. It is a we thing. Peace.